Stephanie White, I've had it up to here with you. I've had it up to here. I know you are going to take zero accountability as always. As always, you blast the referees, I see. You flat out blast the referee.
Stephanie White has reached her boiling point, and the world of basketball is watching the flames rise higher than ever. This wasn't just another post-game presser. This was a full-on eruption, a volcanic meltdown that scorched referees, embarrassed her team, and split the Indiana Fever fan base right down the middle. The problem? None of this was about accountability. This was about deflection, a masterclass in sidestepping blame, like a guard avoiding a charge in the paint. Stephanie came out swinging.
For the horrible officiating on Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell, and I have to say, that's the only good thing you did last night was blast the refs. That's the only good thing you did, because you damn sure did not coach a good basketball game. And I know you're not gonna take any.
Targeting the refs with the kind of passion you'd expect if they had personally stolen her car keys. And for a moment, it worked. Headlines weren't about the Fever's embarrassing collapse, but about her fiery accusations. But when you peel back the drama, what you see is a team that imploded, a coach who lost control, and a fan base now forced to decide whether to defend their leader or call her out for what this really was. One of the biggest smokescreens in WNBA history. The Indiana Fever didn't just lose, they combusted on their home floor. We're not talking about a close loss here. We're not talking about an unlucky bounce or a single bad whistle in crunch time. No, this was the kind of loss where you wonder if someone replaced the team's pregame Gatorade with NyQuil. The defense was shredded like old newspaper. The offense looked allergic to the rim, and the turnovers came so often it looked like the Fever were trying to set a Guinness World Record for giveaways. And yet, what did Stephanie White do after the game? Instead of admitting her squad looked like they were auditioning for a blooper reel, she launched a conspiracy-laced tirade against the officiating crew. It was part comedy, part courtroom drama, and part desperate attempt to redirect the cameras away from the real issue, her coaching and her team's lack of execution.
Look at some response from the Fever fandom, because the Stephanie White coaching situation is now splitting the fan base. All right, there's no way around it at all. You got fans mad that other fans are being critical of the coach.
The Fever had the kind of night you can't even sugarcoat. How do you lose to the Dallas Wings, a team that barely scraped together 8 wins all season before this? This wasn't the Liberty. This wasn't the Aces. This wasn't even a middle-of-the-pack squad. This was Dallas, a team so inconsistent that their season had been a punchline. And yet, in Indiana's own building, the Fever let them storm through with a 19-0 run, at home, in front of their fans. That's not just bad basketball, that's outright negligence. And then to deflect the whole thing onto the refs? Please. The worst part is, this loss wasn't about one bad stretch. It was the entire game. Lazy closeouts on shooters, zero transition defense, and a paint presence softer than tissue paper. At one point, it looked like Dallas could have driven a bus straight through the lane without being touched. And while the refs certainly weren't perfect, because no crew ever is, they didn't miss the layups. They didn't turn the ball over 20+ times. They didn't give up offensive rebounds like they were party favors. That was the Fever, plain and simple. But Stephanie's press conference was a performance in misdirection.
Indiana Fever are complete trash. Trash. How do you lose to the Dallas Wings, who have won 8 games all year? What a joke. Stephanie White is trash. Trash, bruh. Aaliyah Boston, you getting dragged up.
She rattled off missed calls, phantom fouls, and questionable whistles with the confidence of a lawyer giving a closing argument. Fans watching the presser could almost forget that her team had just bricked wide-open corner threes, jogged back on defense like they were out for a Sunday stroll, and surrendered easy putbacks possession after possession. The scoreboard didn't lie, but Stephanie acted like the refs had personally hacked into it. Fever fans are split, and you can see why. On one side, you've got the loyalists who say, she's defending her players, she's protecting the locker room. So on the other side, you've got the realists, the ones who watched Indiana cough up lead after lead and say, no, this isn't about loyalty, this is about accountability. Because the truth is simple, the Fever didn't lose because of the refs. They lost because they were undisciplined, unprepared, and completely outcoached. Let's talk about Aaliyah Boston for a second. the franchise cornerstone. A player who should be dominating in the paint, but instead got dragged up and down the floor by ERUPT. Lai cooked Boston like she was in her own personal kitchen. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't close, it was domination. And instead of addressing why her star center got owned, Stephanie made sure we all walked away thinking about whistles. That's the problem.
You cannot lose that game last night at home. You cannot. You cannot have a 19-0 run put on you in any quarter at home by.
This isn't just about X's and O's. This is about culture. When a coach blames everything external, the players start buying into it. They start believing the reason they're losing isn't because of the turnovers, the lack of discipline, or the defensive lapses. They start believing it's the stripes. And once that culture sets in, the whole season spirals. It's the kind of mentality that separates winners from pretenders. The Fever are talented enough to be a playoff contender, but as long as the message from the top is, "We didn't lose, the refs stole it from us," Stephanie White's meltdown didn't end at blaming referees. It exposed a culture of excuses. The body language on the court mirrored the coach's words. Defeated, frustrated, and unwilling to own what was happening. You could see it in the players' eyes, the way their heads hung after turnovers, the way their energy flatlined after missed shots. That 1,000-yard stare wasn't about refs.
Any team in the league, much less the Dallas Wing, you can't have that run put on you by the New York Liberty at home. All right? That's unacceptable. Much less a trash-ass team like.
It was about resignation. The Fever's problems are bigger than whistles, and the longer they keep pretending otherwise, the deeper they'll sink. Imagine being a Fever fan in that arena. You watch your team fall behind by double digits, claw their way back with heart, only to see the same self-inflicted wounds kill their momentum. You see Sophie Cunningham hustling, Chloe Beebe draining clutch threes, Kelsey Mitchell making plays, only for turnovers and defensive breakdowns to hand Dallas the game anyway. And then, instead of a coach who rallies the team with truth, you get one who gives a TED Talk on officiating conspiracies. That's not what fans signed up for. And let's not sugarcoat this. Chloe Beebe and Sophie Cunningham deserve more shine. While the veterans fumbled possessions and looked checked out, those two played like they cared. Chloe especially. She's fearless. When the ball touches her hands, there's no hesitation. It's going up, and more often than not, it's going in. That's what the Fever need right now.
The refs are not the reason we lost this game. I'm gonna tell you that right now. As piss poor and as trash as these refs have been, and how they should be getting bombed on, and how half of them should be fired and sent back to Home Depot.
Shot makers who don't shrink under pressure. If Stephanie's too busy blaming refs to see that, then maybe someone else needs to be making those rotation calls. But let's zoom out. This isn't just about one bad night. This is about a pattern. Indiana keeps finding new ways to lose, and the narrative after every loss keeps shifting away from accountability. That's not coincidence. That's culture. You can lose games in the WNBA, every team does, but you can't lose credibility. Once players stop believing in the message, once fans stop trusting the vision, the whole house collapses. And Stephanie's refusal to face reality is putting cracks in the foundation. Think about this. How do you give up a 21-3 run at home to a Dallas team that's barely hanging on to relevance? How do you let the crowd watch you go down 17 points before even blinking? That's not officiating, that's preparation. Or the lack of it. At some point, someone has to ask if Stephanie White is truly the one to lead this team. And here's the dangerous ripple effect. When a coach spends more time blaming refs than coaching adjustments, the locker room starts to believe they don't need to change. It breeds complacency.
Insult to injury. When we come out the game, scoring 15 points in the first quarter. When we come out the half, scoring 13 points in the third quarter. When
you lose the edge, you lose the urgency. And soon, you're not just losing games, you're losing seasons. We've seen it before in sports. Teams that spiral because they're too busy pointing outward instead of looking inward. The Fever are inching toward that same fate. Now, some fans will argue the context. Caitlin Clark is sidelined. Their only capable point guards are gone. And yes, the roster is battered. All true. But those circumstances don't explain lazy defense. They don't excuse refusing to call a timeout during a 19-0 run. They don't justify letting Dallas dictate pace and execution for 3 quarters. That's coaching. Injuries and absences are obstacles, not automatic excuses. The truly great coaches rise above them. Right now, Stephanie is sinking beneath them. What makes this all the more frustrating is how close the Fever came at the end. They nearly pulled it off. Down 17 with 6 minutes left, they fought back, they clawed their way into it, and they had a chance. That speaks to the players' resilience. But resilience without guidance is chaos. It's wasted energy. If Indiana had been better coached, that comeback wouldn't have been necessary in the first place.
When we have a coach that allows the Dallas Wings to go on a 19-0 run without making any adjustments, without calling the timeout, Dallas Wings 19-0 run. When we have all of these facts,
the Fever could have been leading, not chasing. Instead, they end up in another episode of post-game drama with Stephanie White at the center of it all. And let's not forget, the refs didn't miss the free throws. Indiana did. The refs didn't allow 6 offensive rebounds in 1 quarter. Indiana did. The refs didn't leave shooters wide open in the corner. Indiana did. You can dress it up however you want, but the loss was self-inflicted. And the refusal to admit that is what makes this so infuriating. If you're a Fever fan, how do you feel right now? Are you inspired by your coach's passion? Or are you exhausted by the excuses? Because that's what this comes down to. Fans aren't stupid. They saw the turnovers, they saw the air balls, they saw the missed assignments. They know the truth, and pretending otherwise only insults their intelligence. Accountability doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. It builds trust. If Stephanie came out and said, "We weren't good enough tonight, and that starts with me," the fans would respect her more. The players would rally behind her more. Instead, she chose to go on the offensive against the officials, and all it did was highlight he.
Stop it. Stop it. Let's see if Stephanie White takes any accountability for how this game played out. And we know